but overwhelmed. And it's a timely hearing because there's a lot of vulnerability in a lot of our water and septic systems, especially in rural America all around the country. And many of our towns, Johnson, Richmond, Woodstock, Morrisville, and Barry, are under boil water orders right now, and that's pretty tough on folks. And on Friday with Senator Sanders and Congresswoman Ballant, we toured Johnson, Vermont, and the wastewater treatment plant was a complete loss. It was amazing. The plant was underwater for 2 days. They had 8 feet of water in the first floor. That's after the basement was flooded. The plant typically takes in 270,000 gallons in a day. It was taken in 1.25 million. The system was outdated, and that's just one example where we had that terrible rain. But from many of the communities that you all represent could probably report outdated systems as well. And these weather events with climate change is getting more and more frequent, and it's more and more urgent that we try to make our systems resilient. One bright spot in the flooding last week is that some of the resiliency work that was done after we had Tropical Storm Irene, that was in 2011, actually made a big difference. FEMA did something where we were able to build back to higher standards as opposed to just what we had. And it's a real argument, I think, for resilience going forward, anticipating the scope of storms that we may have to contend with. In these well-functioning water systems, as you all know, are absolutely essential to rural communities, the health and the safety and the economy of rural communities. And some of the rural communities we have aging or insufficient systems. That's particularly true in lower income communities, many of which have significant challenges facing, in many cases, Black and Hispanic people and people of color. Many of these systems are facing obstacles, and this is true in all of our rural communities, where they have small systems, little funding. Challenges make regular investments in infrastructure impossible, and managing and governing capacity. So all those are big challenges, and when you don't have a tax base to be able to get the resources you need, it makes it very, very tough. So we've got some terrific witnesses here today. Joe Duncan, it's good to have you. President of Green Mountain Water Environment Association, and Jennifer Day, Director of Development. You have firsthand experience with these issues in Vermont, and we look forward to hearing from you. One of our witnesses today, Catherine Coleman Flowers, has spent years fighting for her home community in Lowndes County, Alabama. And I just want to acknowledge your presence and the work you've done over all these years. And what I understand is that one of the incredible effects of not having proper water and septic systems is that there can be real illness. And I understand 34% of the county residents that were tested positive for hookworm because of the pollution. So that is a situation that we don't want anywhere. The USDA Rural Development Program has programs to help small and rural communities. That's to maintain and improve their water systems. And among those programs is technical assistance, which is in real demand in these small communities where they don't have the technical capacity. And that's helpful in evaluating, planning, drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. There are also some grants and loans for construction, although not enough. Communities at every step of the process can benefit from the USDA water programming. And in the Farm Bill, I'm hopeful that we can increase funding where we can and protect funding where we need to. There is a money issue here. How do you afford to do what needs to be done? So we look forward to hearing from our witnesses, and before we do, I want to turn it over to my colleague, the ranking member, Senator Tuberville. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I'd like to start by saying I want to send my condolences to people in Vermont and all the Northeast. What a catastrophe that was last week. And we all saw the pictures on TV, and sometimes even the pictures don't make it, what it actually is. So a lot of people out of their
Thank
homes.
you.
That's tough. I always appreciate working with you here, and what an important topic this is today. We can't do without water, and it's so important that we probably should be spending more time on this than not. I want to extend a special welcome to two Alabamians, Mr. Rob White and Ms. Catherine Flowers. Thanks for being here today. I look forward to our discussion about ways to ensure Americans in rural areas have access to water infrastructure needed to keep them and their families safe and healthy, a topic which impacts constituents in Alabama and really all over the world, not just our country, all over the world. Every American deserves access to water that is clean and safe to drink, and a functioning water system that is safely to dispose of sewage and waste. It doesn't matter where you live or what background you have. Clean drinking water and sanitary waste disposal systems are a necessity that are directly linked to better health outcomes for all Americans. However, communities across the nation face constant threats to their water services due to various contaminants, cybersecurity risk, workforce challenges, aging infrastructure, and funding shortages. So what is this subcommittee's role in the overall rural water discussion? To prioritize rural communities in the Farm Bill discussion, we must help rural communities access the resources they need to achieve economic success, prosperity, and better health and educational outcomes, ensuring they are not left behind their urban counterparts. This is my goal as we continue to look at ways to improve and modernize the various funding and technical assistance programs within the USDA Water and Environmental Protection Programs Division. In Alabama, there are 503 permitted community water systems. Out of over 500 systems in the state, 75% of these serve communities with a population of less than 10,000. Many of these are in what we call the Black Belt. However, all are communities that have all communities have access to public water or wastewater systems. In fact, Quality Water Association states that approximately 23 million households across the country rely on private wells to deliver their water. In Alabama, over 212,000 households rely on private wells. Private wells are a necessity for rural areas as a public water system, and they may not be feasible due to location or funding. Considering these private wells are not subject to the same regulatory oversight as public systems, we must ensure these rural areas have the same access to water treatment systems as the more populated areas. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, approximately 21.7 million households resort to using a septic tank or a decentralized system to remove sewage as a public sewer system is unavailable. In Alabama, many residents throughout the Black Belt rely on these decentralized waste systems. We cannot forget these citizens. No matter your zip code, all Americans deserve the same access to safe drinking water and wastewater systems. I have heard the challenges from rural communities across Alabama who struggle to secure the necessary financing technical assistance to continue operating their water and wastewater systems. In addition to funding concerns, I hear about workforce challenges. Labor shortages continue to be top of mind across not only Alabama, but across our nation. Many certified water operators across the country are aging towards retirement, and there are not enough qualified applicants to fill the positions. We are facing a growing knowledge gap in the future of the water and wastewater industry. We need to close the gap. To comply with numerous federal regulations, small and rural systems are being forced to outsource to private companies as they do not have the staffing capacities or knowledge to perform activities in-house. This is unacceptable. I'll be looking for ways to modernize the regulatory environment at USDA so that water systems are able to be safely served all Americans while complying with regulations based on science, not politics or activism. We must find the delicate balance between updating and maintaining critical infrastructure, treating water to safe levels, preparing for natural disasters, in cybersecurity threats and maintaining a physical budget. I believe this committee can find that balance. So I look forward to this, Mr. Chairman, and look forward to talking to our witnesses today and learning as much as we possibly can about their areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tuberville. Thank you, Senator Tuberville, and I'm delighted that the chair of our committee, Senator Stabenow from Michigan, has joined us. Senator?
Well, let me just say thank you so much for this important hearing, and I'm so appreciative of all the wonderful work the subcommittee is doing. Thank you to you, Chairman Welch and Ranking Member Tuberville. Very much appreciate it. And I also just want to extend my deepest condolences to your home state of Vermont for the ongoing flooding conditions. It's just horrendous. I mean, I've not had the opportunity to be there, but looking at the pictures, it's unbelievable. So I know you're going to continue to be a champion for the recovery in Vermont, and I know that my colleagues will join me in saying we'll do everything we can to help.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And that matters.
So-
And there's so much the USDA can do to help
So
us.
much,
But I
yes.
thank you very much
Yeah.
for that.
And so appreciative of everyone who's here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our witnesses, we'll start with Jennifer Day, who has over 2 decades of experience in community and economic development, including capacity building, managing projects, water system operation. She and her organization provide a very critical technical, financial, and managerial support in progress for sustainability of rural communities. And then we have Joseph Duncan is the general manager of the Champlain Water District. It's a renowned regional water supplier, renowned for those in the community and those of us in Vermont, that received the first Excellence in Water Treatment Award in the United States, very first. The background in consulting engineering and a master's degree in environmental engineering, Joe is responsible for overseeing all operations and business activities in his district. And Catherine Coleman Flowers, internationally recognized environmental activist, author, and MacArthur Genius Grant recipient. She has dedicated her life to advocating for environmental justice, particularly equal access to clean water and functional sanitation for communities in the United States. And her work includes founding the Center for Rural Enterprise and Environmental Justice, serving on the boards of various organizations, and being appointed as vice chair of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. And in 2023 was recognized as one of Time's 100 most influential people in the world. That's pretty amazing. And I'll turn to Senator Tuberville so that you can introduce our other witnesses.
Thank you. First, I'd like to introduce Ms. Polly Undesser. Did I pronounce that correct? Awesome. She serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the Water Quality Association. She spent several years as a WQA's Director of Regulatory and Technical Affairs before becoming CEO, and is a recognized leader with a vast knowledge of water treatment technologies, standards, codes, and regulations. Through WQA, she works to promote the betterment of quality water around the globe. She is also the CEO of the Water Quality Research Foundation, a nonprofit that sponsors relevant academic and professional research to advance the knowledge and science of high-quality sustainable water. In 2016, Ms. Undesser was named to the Association Forum's 40 Under 40 list, and in 2018, she was honored with the Association Forum's Inspiring Leader Award. Congratulations. She holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Illinois and a master's degree in biochemistry from Northern Illinois University. Thanks for being here today. And next is Mr. Rob White. Our next witness, he's from Wetumpka, Alabama. Rob is the executive director of the Alabama Rural Water Association, which represents over 450 water and wastewater utilities across our great state of Alabama. He was born in Troy, spent considerable time in the Wiregrass region of the state, so he knows the ins and outs of rural Alabama. Rob has over 2 decades of experience in improving the water and wastewater industry and works hard to ensure all Alabamians have access to clean water. He is a certified specialist in many fields, including water and wastewater operations, a commercial energy efficiency auditor and training specialist, and the FEMA National Incident Management System. For over a decade, he has helped implement Alabama's Rural Water's Emergency Response Program, which oversees response efforts across various natural disasters and pandemics. Additionally, he manages a loan program for water and wastewater utilities, helps utilities seek diverse funding sources, and provides technical assistance to hundreds of systems across the state. I'm grateful for the hard work Rob has done so far to deliver water and wastewater in our rural communities through Alabama, and look forward to seeing his continued work. Thanks for being here today, Mr. White.
Thank you. And Ms. Jennifer Day, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Welch, Ranking Member Tuberville, and members of the subcommittee for this opportunity to discuss the importance of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Development suite of programs and services that foster rural economic development and prosperity. USDA-RD is the only federal agency dedicated solely to rural America and plays a key role in improving access to capital to ensure rural areas remain great places to live and thrive. I also want to thank this committee for their work on writing the next Farm Bill and for prioritizing water as part of your schedule today. My name is Jennifer Day. I'm the Director of Development with RCAP Solutions, the Northeast and U.S. Caribbean RCAP. I am very proud of my 5 years, both in the field and as the Director of Community and Environmental Resources, responsible for a team of 30 technical assistance providers, serving rural communities across all New England, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. RCAP, or the Rural Community Assistance Partnership, is a national network of nonprofit partners working to provide technical assistance, training, and resources for rural communities in every state, territory, on tribal lands, and in the colonias. Through our network of more than 350 technical assistance providers, they build capacity that leads to sustainable and resilient infrastructure and strengthens rural economies. Our approach is grounded in long-term, trusted relationships in those communities. For 50 years, this network has partnered with multiple federal agencies, including USDA-RD, to bridge the gap between federal programs and the communities they serve. We help communities understand how to properly manage and operate their infrastructure in a fiscally sustainable manner and ensure that federal borrowers meet the terms of their loans. RCAP supports robust reauthorization of USDA-RD water, wastewater, and solid waste grant and loan programs and their associated technical assistance programs, including the Water and Environment Programs, or WEP, in the next Farm Bill. Programs whose impact can be demonstrated in every state and territory, including in Vermont, where flooding last week and the major disaster declaration highlights the importance of the long-term managerial and financial work that is RCAP's specialty, enabling small systems to prepare for and recover from emergencies. In Vermont, the WEP funding allowed RCAP Solutions to work directly with 25 communities in the past few years on a range of critical water and wastewater needs. We helped board members who were previously proud of not having raised rates in over a decade see the light and understand the need to have sustainable rates that cover their true operating expenses. We work with water and wastewater system managers to document system failures, communicate the importance of system upgrades, and provide public education to ensure that all stakeholders can make informed decisions when it comes time to vote on bond measures. The need to plan for system upgrades and comply with regulations does not discriminate based on system size. And technical assistance providers like RCAP help fill the capacity gap for the small rural systems. In most cases, it takes multiple years of pre-development planning and multiple funders to successfully implement each project. The small systems rely on federally funded pre-development grants and technical assistance like USDA-RD and the RCAP network provides. We assist with community engagement, application assistance, and affordability qualifications. Continued support, increased funding, and state office oversight of the search and WEP funds would increase applications to WEP to make sure that no rural systems are left behind. Our funding application assistance and other related tasks helps communities in the Northeast and Caribbean receive 57 awards in fiscal year 22 alone, resulting in over $88 million in grants and low-interest loans. Across the country, we did $400 million in infrastructure funding. I want to thank the committee for their work to reauthorize the critical USDA RD programs in the next Farm Bill, and we look forward to working with you to ensure that the rural communities and USDA have the tools that they need to promote improved quality of life for rural America.
Thank you. Joseph Duncan.
Thank you, Chair Welch, Ranking Member Tuberville, and the members of the committee. I want to thank you for having me here to speak to what I believe is, in my mind, the most important thing out there: water, safe drinking water. If anybody can live without it, I ask you to raise your hand. One of the things that Senator Welch touched upon was how the reactive measures during Irene in 2011 helped to address and abate some of the issues that occurred in the 2023 flooding that just occurred here in Vermont, and that is wonderful. It's wonderful that things like that happen, where you can put stuff in place and avoid incidents in the future. A lot of our water systems operate that way. They wait for something bad to happen, and when something bad happens, that's when they make a reactive investment in it. That reactive investment is typically not one that is the most prudent way to go about for users and investors in the system. People are paying rates to keep their systems up. There's a reason it's called operation and maintenance. A lot of times what happens is, especially in Vermont, people are just keeping their rates, as Jennifer said, keeping their rates low, thinking that they're helping out their fellow citizens, when in reality is they're not doing them any favors. Inflation, as well as all the supply chain issues and cost increases that we saw with COVID, have caught up very quickly on that. In Vermont alone, I mean, we are an extremely small state, extremely small systems. 10,000 is the cutoff for USDA rural development funding. We have about 1,300 public water systems in Vermont, serving about 59% of our 647,000 residents in Vermont. And we have, of that size, there's even a smaller amount of systems that are less than 1,000. 95% of our systems are less than 1,000 people. So we are an extremely rural state. So I know what it looks like to try and overcome some of the challenges that a lot of these small systems are seeing. We need to look at USDA as one of the ways to help our water systems understand how to do stuff in a proactive manner. We have to do it both with our assets and our infrastructure on a investment basis, as well as stopping to take a look at how do we address the changes in climate that are affecting us, whether it's impacting your source waters with hot, dry weather so that you don't have the ability to access water to deliver to people. Perhaps it's rain events that are impacting your infrastructure by flooding them or washing stuff away. And how do you get yourself to be more resilient to deal with that? As well as, which is this USDA plays a role in, is the electric grid, which I'm not here to speak to, but there isn't a water system in the country that I am aware of that doesn't need the electric grid to operate. So we not only need to look at that from a water system perspective with our own infrastructure, but how are we with our partners in what we use to produce our water. So, so to me, looking at the Farm Bill, it's something that comes up every 5 years. We have an opportunity to, one, make some investments in it. One of the things I know in talking to our Vermont residents, as well as people in the water industry, there's a concern that the recent ARPA monies, as well as BIL money, is going to give everything that we need to address all of our water infrastructure needs. And that is not the case, especially in rural states like Vermont. That we need that money to help fund infrastructure on a very small scale and USDA is a great place, a great source for that. It's also one of the only funding sources that I'm aware of that is also not a regulatory compliant piece. The EPA is great with providing funds, but the EPA is a regulatory agency, and there's a lot of scared people in Vermont in utilizing that. So the ability to continue the circuit rider program, because boots on the ground has been incredible for this recent event as well as other events. Trying to look at climate resiliency and funding that, as well as asset management, is critical for our water systems. And then the last thing I'll say is that there does need to be a look at, and it's in my testimony, so I'll leave it at that, that bonding is a real challenge in Vermont, the way that the program is set up. And there are some ways, I think, that the SRF handles it, that perhaps USDA Rural Development could look at, so that bonding becomes more of a certainty for accessing funding. I thank you.
Thank you. And Catherine Coleman Flowers.
Thank you, Chairperson Welch, Ranking Member Tuberville, and all the members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to testify. My name is Catherine Coleman Flowers. I'm a disabled veteran and founding director of the Center for Rural Enterprise and Environmental Justice in Huntsville, Alabama. I also serve as the practitioner in residence at Duke University. I'm a member of the boards of the National Resources Defense Council, the American Geophysical Union, and the Climate Reality Project. In 2020, I was awarded a MacArthur Fellowship in Environmental Health, and I authored the book entitled Waste: One Woman's Fight Against America's Dirty Secret. In my book, I uncovered the extent in which rural America has been denied access to sustainable and resilient wastewater infrastructure. Too many people in this country lack safe, reliable, functioning sanitation. 1 in 5 households are not able to send their sewage to a centralized wastewater treatment plant. These families rely on on-site sanitation systems that are more likely to fail. This impacts people across the country. For an example, areas like the Colonias and tribal nations lack indoor plumbing. In Hawaii, 88,000 aging cesspools are leaking 53 million gallons of untreated waste into streams, oceans, and drinking water every day. Across Appalachia, raw sewage flows past people's homes. Centerville, Illinois, and Miami, Florida are facing well-publicized struggles with sanitation issues. These systems are absent or failing in small rural communities from the Central Valley in California to native villages in Alaska. In Puerto Rico, communities struggle to rebuild wastewater and septic systems damaged by hurricanes. As a Lowndes County, Alabama native, I'm too familiar with the way sanitation failures affect families. Located between Selma and Montgomery, the soil and rising water tables in this area are not suitable for conventional septic systems. It is common for families to have failing systems that cause raw sewage to back up into their homes or into their yards. A 2017 peer-reviewed study found evidence of hookworm and other tropical parasites in rural residents exposed to raw sewage. Failing systems degrade people's quality of life, take a toll on mental health, and causes economic harm by making it difficult to attract businesses. Data gaps make it difficult to understand the true extent of the problem and the people that it affects. However, all communities do not equally share these burdens. Low-income and rural areas are more likely to lack a centralized wastewater treatment system and are disproportionately affected by inadequate sanitation. This underinvestment in sustainable infrastructure goes back decades and is being worsening by the climate crisis. As we've heard today, what is happening in Vermont and rural towns across that state who have lost access not only to safe drinking water, but also to sanitation because of intense flooding. We can make America a model of ingenuity and have a resilient infrastructure for everyone. The Farm Bill funds several USDA programs that can help, including the Rural Decentralized Water Systems Program. This program helps low and moderate income families in rural areas finance the cost of on-site systems. Senators Booker and Capito have introduced a bill to reauthorize the program and make it work better. This bill is a positive step toward addressing critical rural sanitation needs across the nation. A strengthened version of it should be included in this year's Farm Bill with the following improvements. One of the things that I really want to make sure I cover this before I run out of time, all sanitation systems funded with this program must be required to carry a warranty of up to 10 years. We know from experience that these systems fail often. Manufacturers and installers need to be held accountable instead of blaming rural residents. This is the only thing that I know where people spend this kind of money and it goes into the ground, and if it fails, the homeowners are blamed. Rural America deserves better. My written testimony has additional recommendations, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to continuing this conversation about sanitation equity for all.
Thank you very much. Polly Andresser.
Thank you,
Yes.
Chairman Welch and Ranking Member Tuberville and all of the members on the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me to testify and be a synergistic resource as you're working through your leadership on modernizing community rural water systems. My name is Polly Andresser, and I'm honored to be here and address the subcommittee as the CEO of the Water Quality Association and the Water Quality Research Foundation. WQA is a not-for-profit association that amplifies and unites a voice of over 2,500 member companies, mostly headquartered on U.S. soil, and employ hundreds of thousands of workers. For over 75 years, our members have manufactured, distributed, and installed water quality improvement solutions in homes and in businesses. WQA upholds ethics and integrity while serving as an educator for water treatment professionals, a certifier for water treatment products, and an information source for the public. The Water Quality Research Foundation is the industry's not-for-profit data-generating powerhouse that advances the mission of water quality by sponsoring peer-reviewed academic research. Modernizing water systems, whether public, private, or otherwise, is critical for millions of Americans across the United States facing drinking water contamination from various sources, including lead, arsenic, nitrates, PFAS, and others. I applaud the federal government's recent efforts to combat these concerns and ensure safer drinking water for all Americans. Congress, through the leadership of this subcommittee, should continue these efforts in the 2023 Farm Bill to ensure that rural communities are not left behind. Congress, EPA, and the CDC have all recognized that point-of-use and technologies are effective solutions. Most options treating water closest to the point of consumption can be installed faster than centralized treatment systems, meaning people are protected sooner. More specifically, those living in rural communities served by private wells, like me and my family for the past 20 years, in-home solutions are coveted as the proven solution to improve water quality. USDA Rural Development suite of water and environmental programs has been incredibly successful in improving the safety of rural communities' drinking water, but more needs to be done. More to educate residents in their water quality, and more to make funding available under current programs. By creating new program offerings, USDA can provide flexibility for these communities to leverage proven solutions. WQA strongly encourages the subcommittee to prioritize the implementation of point-of-use and point-of-entry solutions as a key tool for modernizing rural water systems. WQA is particularly supportive of S806, which is known as the Healthy H2O Act, and urges the subcommittee to include this essential legislation within the 2023 Farm Bill. This bipartisan, bicameral legislation would provide grants to low and moderate income households and licensed child care facilities in rural communities to conduct water quality testing and to fund the purchase, installation, and maintenance of water treatment solutions. These treatment solutions would be required to meet national performance standards for any contaminants identified during testing and installed, serviced, maintained by qualified professionals. The Healthy H2O Act already has the support of many members, both from the House and Senate Agriculture Committees, and we anticipate all subcommittee members will be eager to join supporting this bipartisan, common sense solution. Availability of high-quality drinking water is a cornerstone for fortifying prosperous communities. It is of critical importance for rural communities to be afforded the same opportunity to enhance their quality of life through reliable and affordable access to quality drinking water equal to their urban and suburban counterparts. Technologies installed closest to the point of consumption are crucial components in this effort. I thank the subcommittee for your time, attention, and thoughtful review of including the Healthy H2O Act in the 2023 Farm Bill. I am a subject matter expert for the betterment of water quality, and I'm available as a resource in your leadership for modernizing rural water systems. Thank you.
Thank you. And Robert White.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Welch, Ranking Member Tuberville, and esteemed members of this committee. I'm honored to be here today to offer my insights on the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Water, and Environmental programs and their crucial technical assistance initiatives, which are integral for offering affordable and sustainable services to rural America. I would like to extend my gratitude to Senator Tuberville for his invitation, and more importantly, his stalwart leadership and advocacy for Alabama's rural water and wastewater sector. I serve as the Executive Director of the Alabama Rural Water Association, a nonprofit organization that advocates for small and rural water and wastewater systems across Alabama. I'm also here on behalf of the National Rural Water Association, which represents over 31,000 rural systems throughout the country. Our rural systems have their roots in the 1960s Farmers Home Administration, and they continue to benefit from assistance and support from its successor agency, Rural Development. If I may, I'd like to express my gratitude to this committee for its unwavering commitment to these successful initiatives. USDA Rural Development, designed by Congress, is key to supporting rural America, especially since 91% of the nation's water systems serve communities with less than 10,000 residents. Rural Development's mission is to expand and modernize water infrastructure, and rural water provides the critical technical assistance needed to sustain these services. Many communities in Alabama have access to safe and affordable water service today that their grandparents never had, thanks to the resources authorized by this committee. Thank you. I will now quickly review a few of our top priorities for your consideration as you draft the 2023 Farm Bill. First, the Circuit Rider Program, established by this committee in 1980, is our pioneer initiative aimed at offering solutions and hands-on support to rural communities. Water Circuit Riders offer a wide range of on-site hands-on assistance and training. On a national scale, last year alone, Water Circuit Riders made a direct impact on the health and safety of over 24 million individuals, constituting 41% of rural America. Circuit Riders respond immediately to calls for assistance, whether they concern disaster management, sourcing disinfection supplies, design and construction advice, or system operation and maintenance, to make sure water service is available every second of every day. We humbly request this committee reauthorize this flagship program. Second, the NRWA and state rural water associations have been at the forefront of emergency disaster response for decades. Last year, during a historic cold front, Alabama Circuit Riders were responding to utilities on Christmas Day, finding and fixing leaks and distributing 6 truckloads of bottled water to communities without water service at no cost to those utilities. We propose that this committee consider extending authorities to enhance preparedness activities to aid systems in recovery outside the scope of immediate disaster response and ensure a more resilient water sector. Another ongoing project of note is the Closing America's Wastewater Access Gap Community Initiative. ARWA has partnered with USDA and EPA to mitigate wastewater issues in Lowndes and Greene County, Alabama. This pilot project was announced in Whitehall, Alabama last August to introduce a variety of wastewater treatment solutions for communities that lack sufficient sewer service. The latest estimate indicate that roughly $1.4 billion are needed to implement decentralized wastewater treatment technologies and resolve individual septic tank issues across Alabama's Black Belt alone. Next, I'd like to discuss the latest cybersecurity issues facing rural water. In Alabama, system regulatory inspections occurring after October 1st, 2023 will require a cybersecurity audit. Unfortunately, given the scope and complexity of cybersecurity, the reality is most rural utilities lack the financial resources and in-house expertise to secure themselves from cyber threats. We suggest this committee consider providing funding for cybersecurity circuit riders to help rural water systems protect their utility and its customers. We also recommend modernizing the Rural Development water and wastewater programs to better address current utility needs with additional affordable financing and servicing options. This should include 0% and 1% loans to disadvantaged or economically distressed communities. EPA and the Rural Housing Service already have similar authorities. Finally, we recommend advancing voluntary consolidation of rural communities by allowing a contiguous system to apply for a grant or loan on behalf of a neighboring underserved community. This authority should be narrow and ensure that the additional subsidy is targeted entirely to the community in need. In summary, USDA's rural development water and environmental programs are critical in keeping rural America's water and wastewater service areas economically viable while also providing the resources to support underserved communities. With a current backlog of around $4 billion, demand remains high. ARWA and NRWA are honored to continue and strengthen the successful partnership with USDA Rural Development in this committee. Thank you for the opportunity to participate today.
Thank you. I want to thank all the witnesses for their excellent testimony. And I am the last senator before a vote closes, so I'm going to have to leave temporarily to vote, and I'm going to turn the gavel over to Senator Ben Ray Lujan. Thank you, and I'll be right back.
Well, with that comes a privilege to ask a question, I believe. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me dig in there real quick as the gavel's going to switch to another hand, so I'm going to jump on this opportunity. My first question, Ms. Day, surrounds colonias. So I appreciate you raising those as well. And I appreciated the testimony of Mr. White with the importance of being able to apply for neighboring communities that may be in need as well, and how you can get them support. One of the challenges with colonias is they're unincorporated communities. And so it's hard to do that. And so my question to you is, looking at New Mexico specifically, home to about 129 colonias, and for those that don't know what they are, these are unincorporated communities. They often have economic challenges. They're generally economically distressed. They're along the U.S.-Mexico border in the United States, and they lack access to safe drinking and sanitary wastewater systems. Now, in 2022, USDA announced $13 million investment to expand access into these areas. So we support these, and we appreciate them. Specifically, as you pointed out, Ms. Coleman Flowers, to colonias, rural and tribal communities as well. Now, these investments are vital to ensuring that at-risk communities are able to take advantage of these funds. Now, my question to you, Ms. Day, is, as colonias are unincorporated, they don't have a mayor or a council. Often they don't have a voice in state or federal government. How can federal programs such as USDA's water and environmental program better catch our colonias and rural communities so they don't fall through the cracks when it comes to providing essential utilities?
Thank you, Senator Lujan. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to this. We know that this area is the environmental impact of weather will continue to make this issue worse for these communities. I know that when RCAP technical assistance providers are working in a community, we are empowering them to make decisions on their own. We hear often that, we are, giving them the tools that they need, and then they are using those tools. So in Colonias, we were looking at continued technical assistance and funding. It's critical to maintain those water systems. And we are often there when boards transition after a big project. So for us, it feels like that is the place that we can, have the most impact is, helping even communities that are underfunded continue to find a way forward. We'll be there for 10 years if that's what it takes.
I appreciate that. And Ms. Coleman Flowers, you mentioned colonias as well in your testimony. Do you have some thoughts to the question that I presented to Ms. Day?
Yes, I think that, first of all, a lot of people don't know what the colonias are. They don't know that there are over 2,177 communities from Texas to California. And a lot of these areas are dealing with the same problems that we see in Lowndes County, Alabama. And I think that there should be more of an emphasis on that. And as the co-vice chair of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, my suggestion to everybody, just as when I first met Senator Booker, I invited him to come to Lowndes County to see for himself. I think that the only way we can even come up with positive solutions to those areas is going to visit and convene people in those communities to try to get this work done. I know that in California, for an example, they have just instituted a program where they're trying to find out how many people are on septic or don't have systems at all, so that they can come up with policies and ways in which to address this. And I think one of the ways we can do this is to fund USDA to actually do the type of study to collect that data to close those gaps, so that we can policymakers can make the type of policies to address these issues.
I appreciate that. And I have some other questions. I'll submit them into the record, but I'm reminded through your testimony, Ms. Coleman Flowers, you can't unsee what your eyes show you. And it's the power of seeing and feeling, because you understand people's stories and plights as well when you go down there and see for yourself. So I thank you for that reminder. I yield back.
By the power vested in me by Senator Welch, I hereby decree that Senator Braun shall go next.
Thank you, Senator Booker. I have gotten water ever since I moved back to my hometown from a rural water district, Patoka Lake, an Army Corps lake, several utilities get water from it. I'm not sure about it, but in at least 10 places across our state, we've had PFAS showing up in the water at levels above the federal guidelines. Ms. Undesser, you talked about that. How can these rural districts use point of use and point of entry systems? Is that economically viable for them to address an issue that I think we're all going to be more worried about in the future?
Thank you, Senator Braun. Appreciate the question, and PFAS is very complex. It's moving target, adding new compounds all the time. However, one thing that is great to know today is that there are solutions that are certified products that can remove specific PFAS compounds. And those products can be installed in rural water communities by qualified individuals that would take care of the installation, service, and maintenance of those as well. So the solutions are available today. The Healthy H2O Act would help in the areas of low to moderate income areas where having access to reliable and affordable technologies is a real challenge. So including that in the Farm Bill is something that'll be key going forward.
And then another question for you, and then Mr. White. Oftentimes I hear that there are guidelines, regulations, and actually building out a water system that are difficult. I'd like each of you to maybe talk about the one or two that you would hear most often about, whether it makes sense or whether they're overburdening, and apply it again to these smaller water districts that might not have the resources to navigate through all of that.
As the Water Quality Association, the biggest burdens we hear about when it comes to creating a new centralized system is the time to get the solutions in and the cost to be able to get the solutions there as well. So there are products and solutions that are able to do things today and in a timely, certified manner as well.
Mr. White, is the regulatory framework that we got in place, does it hit the sweet spot, making sure that we adhere to them? Or are there any instances where it's over the top?
There are definitely challenges with some of the regulations. Lead in drinking water, getting the lead out, that is one that many water systems are struggling to kind of wrap their hands around as far as how they're going to address this and get the resources into the local systems and be able to put those into the field. PFAS is another emerging contaminant that's causing a lot of questions and consternation with rural water systems, especially as this emerging contaminant is found within various water sources. It's very costly to remove these chemicals. And so some of the rural systems just simply would likely not have the capacity to be able to implement upgrades required in order to remove those chemicals.
And is there something beyond remediating contaminants? I'm talking about just the general construction of water systems, or do you feel that the guidelines we give when we cost share here, is it reasonable in terms of actually building out a water system in the first place?
I believe so. One of the largest problems that we have in Alabama, and I'm sure across the nation, is supply chain disruptions. We work with a lot of systems trying to get funding, projects designed and get funding from, say, USDA or SRF into the community. The projects have been extended for months and months. The turnaround time on these has just been extended out years in some cases, and the cost is ever increasing. So oftentimes we get the project obligated, and by the time we put those funds out for bid to the communities, those cost overruns are to the extent that they have to go back to USDA, apply for more money to even complete the project that was originally designed.
Thank you.
I will go next because I've got the gavel, and Mr. Tuberville is a generous man. Thank you, sir. First of all, I'm grateful for the ranking member and the chairman for holding this committee. I can't tell you about the urgency, and I think it was reflected in a lot of the comments that were made beforehand. I'm frankly, when I finally started doing the research when I got into the Senate, I didn't realize how much of a crisis many areas of our nation have by just having not access to clean water or to septic systems. And I was telling the ranking member that my roots go down into Alabama, and I owe that state so much of my life. And when I went down to meet with you, Catherine, when you challenged me to come down and actually see for yourself, I was really stunned. And it started because I was meeting with a doctor who was telling me that we have these tropical diseases that many doctors don't know that exist in many areas of this country that have these kind of straight piping because they have no septic systems or wastewater systems at all. And when you see it for yourself and you meet with people who are struggling with this, it just makes you think it's a shame of our nation, a nation this strong, this powerful, this wealthy that couldn't do something about it. And that's why I'm glad this is a bipartisan issue, which is reflected in the comments from all the witnesses as well as from many of my colleagues. I've had the privilege of working with Senator Capito, who's been a great partner in addressing these issues. And we were able to create authority for the USDA to provide loans and grants to low-income households to install individual wastewater systems. Now, in the upcoming Farm Bill, Senator Capito and I are looking to make improvements to the program that we were able to get established. And I'm going to direct my questions to, sincerely, one of my great American heroes. Catherine, you have inspired me more than you know, and I'm just grateful. So one of the changes that Senator Capito and I are pushing for in the Farm Bill is for a program to provide funding for warranties to accompany these septic systems. Can you talk about the warranties and why they're so important?
Yes, I think that, thank you, Senator Booker. I think
She calls me Corey when we're not in public.
I can't do that today. But it's very important because what happens is once the septic system is put in, and we paid for a lot of them in Lowndes County, the liability is transferred to the homeowner. And when that liability, when they fail, the homeowner has to fix it. And a lot of them can't afford to do that. And we're finding, not just in Alabama, but across the country, these systems are failing within 2 years. And some of them, when they do fail, it's very costly to fix, and people don't fix it. That's when they start straight piping, or they do something else to come up with some remedy that's not legal in order to make sure that the sewage doesn't come back into their homes. When they come back into their homes, it comes back either through a bathtub, it can come back through a sink. I mean, those of us that are pet owners know that a dog would not sleep on a bed that has been fouled. So why do we expect humans to live that way? And I think the only way we can really change the way this works is to have warranties in place. It can inspire research and development and improvements. I mean, if we look at, I'm old enough to know when a car wouldn't last more than 2 years. But when we had competition and we had to look at cars that were being made in other countries that were lasting longer, American cars got better too. Likewise with warranty systems for these wastewater systems that people have to have. I spoke with Ranking Member Tuberville earlier, and he talked about the importance of water. Sanitation is also important. It is a part of water, and we have to have that for health and safety. So having these warranties in place, I think, would ensure health and safety for all homeowners, and certainly those in rural communities that should not be left to fix this on their own.
Thank you, Catherine. I had a brief brush with power, which I'm now about to lose to the great Senator Welch. I didn't even get to slam the gavel down, but I will ask you just one more question before I surrender the position I have that has most of the people here in awe. One of the, well, despite authorizing both grants and loans, we know that the USDA has administered this program strictly as a loan program. Now, the folk I saw in Alabama and now have seen in other places aren't the folk that can really afford these programs. So can you talk to me a little bit about how important it is that low-income households, which are usually the households affected, receive grants to install these systems?
Yes, I think that's a very important point. Not only low-income households, but also for a lot of the communities. When I first got involved doing this work, I remember talking with Senator Sessions years ago about why rural communities, although the money was available, couldn't get it because they couldn't come up with a match. But likewise with loans, a lot of these families are struggling. They can't afford that. And everybody in this country, I believe, that we're a great nation, and everybody in this country should have the right to sanitation, and they shouldn't be able to be without it simply because they can't afford a loan. That's why grants would be very important to a lot of poor families across the U.S.
Mr. Chairman, Catherine said that eloquently, but I had this wonderful, beautiful moment with Senator Shelby in the gym, of all places. He and I used to work at odd times and became really good friends because we were the only two people in the gym, and nobody there was to make fun of how little work we were doing in the gym. But when I told him about your problem, Catherine, he said the exact same thing, that these are good folk that should have what's so basic, and did a lot on his position to deal with the issue. I'm glad that we have Alabama senators that have the same heart to address these issues, and that this has been such a bipartisan space for me to work in, and I'm just really grateful. So thank you, Mr. Powerful Chairman.
Thank you, and by the way, I want to acknowledge the letter that you're working on to get data that we need in order to focus where we need to have the allocation of resources. So thank you very much, and look forward to working with you on that. Senator Tuberville.
I'll yield to my colleague, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith.
Thank you very much, because I do have a couple of questions, and thank you for hosting this important meeting. Thank you for coming to testify. This is so valuable to hear from folks, and I know sometimes it's hard to come up here and do that. It takes a lot of time, and I just appreciate your willingness to do that. Mr. White, the Rural Water Associations, it just provides so much technical service that's very valuable for the training of our small utility providers. And when the tornadoes blew through Mississippi just a couple of months ago, that the Rural Water Association responded instantly to help and address, and they were so knowledgeable. And you've already talked about this of the Circuit Rider program. Can you kind of elaborate on that, like in disasters such as this tornado, how valuable that is, and how the communities benefit so much from this technical support?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So, rural water, we have a robust emergency response program. It exists across the nation. National Rural Water is a leader overall in emergency response, and the states join together to support that effort. And the states, we actually own and operate a lot of our own equipment, generators, bypass pumps, and just a variety of equipment that we pull together in times of need. Even now, the flooding in Vermont, my counterpart, Liz Royer, I know she's got her team out responding to systems now, and she knows that if she needs assistance, she'd be able to reach out to our national network of emergency responders, and we will show up when necessary. One additional resource that would be very helpful from this committee and the Farm Bill is building upon the emergency response network, having a circuit rider that could be dedicated to emergency response would be invaluable to the states across the nation. Right now, we can respond to disasters as they occur. When the tornadoes occur, we move our teams in. We help get those communities put back together as quickly as possible and bridge the time where those communities will be without commercial power so that we can set generators and keep the water plants up and running so people can clean up and move forward while the commercial power industries get those resources put together for the communities. So, but in times of blue sky, we refer to, there's a lot of work that can be done that we generally cannot focus on in those days. So if we had the resource and ability to have a full-time circuit rider position that could go around and network with state and federal agencies, work with the communities, ensure that they have all of their hazard requirements on hazard mitigation lists and county emergency networks, those are required for when a disaster moves through the community, for the community to be able to access the money that immediately precedes that disaster. In addition, the administrative efforts are quite intense for any community that's going through a disaster. And to be able to support tracking all of the expenses and filing all the required documents with the appropriate agencies afterwards in order to get money that's made available back into the community and not leave any of that on the table would be a huge benefit to those rural systems.
Well, thank you very much, because we sure benefited from it then. And, you know, I understand your testimony that workforce recruitment is a challenge as well, and development for rural water associations. And, you know, I'm really passionate about keeping young people in rural areas, but, you know, we've got to provide something for them. And one way to do that is promoting and encouraging careers and technical education to help us out here. And it's great to see the water apprenticeship program in Mississippi. It's taking off down there, but how can Congress help ensure these workforce challenges are met in rural America's water industry, particularly when it comes to recruitment and with training and retention and keeping these people here?
Yes, thank you. The apprenticeship program is growing, and we are certainly proud of it. Alabama is one of the 34 states now that have developed an apprenticeship program. We've recently started ours. We're looking for our first graduate next April, so hopefully that will go smooth. Additional resources, just continuing to support the resources that are available now with training that's offered through the technical assistance provisions in the Farm Bill is a huge asset to rural water systems throughout the country, really. And the apprenticeship program is going to continue to grow. It gives us the opportunity to promote the industry where we haven't been able to before. In Alabama, we're going to engage in career centers and be able to get the word out to people so that they can engage with our industry in a proactive manner, and then also provide a structured platform to move those people from curious about water and wastewater work into the career that we all know it could be, a very rewarding career.
And another thing that's been discussed a lot is the challenges that communities face when navigating the funding application. You know, we get calls on that for water and wastewater projects, and we may want to talk about that. I know my time is out right now, if you will indulge, but how can the administrative burden for small and rural water communities be alleviated when participating in the USDA funding programs for water and wastewater projects? And we're going to have to be fast because I'm a minute over.
I will try to be quick. Some of the most success that we have in the state when rural communities reach out and they are looking to apply to USDA for a project is we'll send the team out. They'll go and they can help kind of navigate and cut a lot of the red tape or the initial burden of engaging with USDA's online RD Apply system, for instance. There are a few complications in there that are required. They have to be registered with SAMS.gov, and sometimes there can be some back and forth. In fact, that one can be difficult at times. But having the technical assistance available to be able to move into a community, get all the registrations registered, get the team pulled together, and they have to have an e-authentication credential in order to engage with the system. The individual roles have to be set up. You got to bring the engineers in, the accountants, and all of that to the table. So having the technical resource able to come in and help organize and get all that together so that we could kick the project off or the application off seems to be of great assistance to those communities.
Oh, makes sense. Thank you very much. And we have 5 votes going on, so I apologize. The table looks empty, but they just called the second vote, and I'm going to go vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Duncan, I appreciate the help you're giving us in Vermont to assess what the damage has been. Do we need to make any changes to give USDA more flexibility to upgrade the resilience factors to accommodate the reality of the more extreme weather events that are occurring?
Yes, my take on things is to always look to find the proactive ways to deal with things as opposed to the reactive ways. And I think that USDA rural development can play a role in doing that. I know EPA has a CREATE, I believe they call it, for climate resiliency evaluation tool. But what you're looking for is those small communities don't know where to begin at all with any of this. So let alone the aging infrastructure needs that they have, they don't really have a sense of where to go. So planning assistance is very valuable there. That also applies for how to understand where their weak points are in their system when it comes to any kind of extreme weather event, and how to prepare for that, whether it's a large infrastructure investment or whether it's a small infrastructure investment. So providing the technical resources to allow for that, to get ahead of it, in my mind, is a way that USDA Rural Development, through their water environment programs, can play a role in making sure that as extreme events do occur, we're more buffered in being able to
By the way,
handle
does
those.
that also get to where the circuit riders are able to provide that kind of support and help that small communities just don't have the resources for?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, the circuit riders in Vermont, I know, and it sounds very similar for Bob White in Alabama, and I'm sure in the rest of the rural water world, where those circuit riders are out there talking about not only the day-to-day stuff, but all those, especially I know in Vermont, it'll be a big topic for a while on how can we avoid this in the future and what can we be doing. The
Let me
circuit
ask
riders will
you,
be
were
doing that.
mentioning about bonding, and it's a really big deal for communities to have to assess themselves when they already feel overtaxed. And you can't spread that out. So what are the concrete suggestions you'd make? Because what I understand is the apprehension people have that the bond amount is not going to cover the cost of the project, so they're reluctant to vote for something where they don't know what the bottom line is going to be. What could we do to address that?
The way that, at least in Vermont, the way it's handled is that it's a first-come, first-served basis for USDA rural development loan and grant funding. And obviously, the grant funding element is based upon median household income and your rates where they stand. But what happens is USDA Rural Development will give you an estimate of what they believe their loan and grant package will be, at which point the voters, the users of the system have to conduct a bond vote to try and pass the financial will of the system to cover that loan amount that comes. But then you have to put the application in and hope that the package that they told that you might get will actually be there and available for you when you actually get the application in and to them.
Okay, thank you.
Providing certainty is key.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman-Flowers, you said there should be a 10-year warranty. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, what's been the practice for folks who put money out, hoping that, and they come together to do it, it's a big decision, and they want to get that problem solved. Is it the standard practice that there's no warranty for the construction and building of these systems?
Well, we were engaged in discussions with some manufacturers early on. This is actually prior to COVID, and we talked about this. And there, right now, the warranties generally, you can, through some home warranty companies, the homeowner has to take the responsibility themselves. Some insurance companies would cover it. But why is it transferred from the manufacturers? I think there should be a manufacturer's warranty. That's the only thing that's going to encourage research and development and improvement. So why it's like that, I don't know. But for something that's so important, we need to change it.
All right. I listened to you, Senator Tuberville. One of the things I thought I heard you say was trying to target that money to the places that need it the most in the rural areas. Maybe you could comment on that, Ms. Flowers?
Yes, I think that in terms of rural communities, there are numerous ways in which we should look at how we get money to them. I think I've heard my colleagues today talk about the challenges of getting to these communities, these funds. A lot of funds are available now, but they need the technical assistance to be able to access it. And I think that we need to come up with a process in which when I first started doing this work over 20 years ago, there was a USDA office that was open in Lowndes County, where someone came at least once a week. Now that person that is no longer there and people have to travel long distances. I think we have to find a way in which to make it accessible to people in rural communities where they can get these funds. We also have to keep in mind that part of the problem too is a lot of these communities don't have broadband. If you have to register for SAMS.gov in order to even apply for the funds, that's the first hassle to get to the funds. So we have to make sure that rural communities, a lot of these gaps are closed, not just the wastewater gap, but a lot of these gaps are closed in rural communities so they can get access to technical assistance that you do make available.
Well, thank you. Just to let you know, Senator Tuberville and I have made it a major priority about broadband in rural America for this committee to focus on, so thank you for that. Ms. Day, I want to ask you a little bit about the technical assistance program, and you've done a great job on that. How do the TA providers help communities before and after the natural disasters? We're having one right now, but can you just elaborate a bit on that?
Thank you. Yes. So there's emergency response plans and vulnerability assessments that are part of the USDA loan requirements. And so USDA helps us, to get those done in the communities so that these planning documents that might have been sitting on a shelf are actually, we take them down, we work through them with the community and make sure that they're up to date and accurate and are a viable document to work on, pre and post disasters.
And how can we be developing some more managerial capacity? Senator Hyde-Smith was asking about the training and the availability of a workforce and wanted to have opportunities for young people who'd like to stay in a rural community or come there to be able to have a good job. But how do we do that?
So we'll take any opportunity to work on workforce development. We've had some foundation work and some other work that we've been able to, combine together to really raise the position of these water operators in the communities. I've worked on so many consent order when I started in this field for the elderly manager of the system who is a volunteer who is operating the system without the correct licenses. And so, there's a lot that can be done around regionalization, and if there's some more planning dollars available to help the small disadvantaged communities who are strapped anyway without accurate coverage for operators, then those larger systems could actually do eligibility criteria too to get the grants from USDA, because the smaller system is probably more eligible for grants, and then that can work to bring the lack of operators that we have,
Right.
making sure that there are more of them to go around.
Thank you. Senator Tuberville, and take the time you want. I went over a little bit.
No
I
problem.
don't want to shortchange you.
No problem. The problem we're having, obviously in the rural areas too, is get enough people educated to do the work in the rural areas. Urban areas are fine. They'll struggle, but we're really struggling in the rural areas. I'm going to ask everybody this one question, 20 seconds or more, just don't make it long. If you've got a perspective on this, what's the most critical element in ensuring the operation of safe public drinking water supply? Rob, what do you think the most critical element is?
I would say the most critical element would be your trained operators who have to oversee these systems and actually put in place, abide by all the regulations and create the plans and assess the system to make sure the system is rehabilitated when necessary and has a plan to move forward and remains in compliance and within the regulatory bounds every day.
Ms. Sundesser?
The most critical item as far as looking at safe public drinking water supply certainly is, how do we think about water differently going forward? It's a complex world, and it's only getting more complex as we're sitting here right now. So we really need to think differently and really leverage all of our solutions that are out there.
Keep it simple, stupid, right? That's what we need to. Ms. Flowers?
I think that the most critical element for under-resourced and under-served communities is access to funding.
Thank you. Mr. Nucky?
The answer is definitely trained operators, but playing off of that a little bit is having the resources for those operators, being able to give them technical assistance, as well as being able to allow them to plan for how to manage and operate the infrastructure that they have to work with and keep in good condition, whether it's something that's aging and knowing when to make those changes and having the investments to do so, or whether it's understanding the risks, both cyber, climate, and whatever, to be able to address the needs and create a sustainable water future.
Thank you. Ms. Day?
I would add educated and informed board members who actually run the systems and make the decisions, that they're informed about the technical aspects of running the wastewater and water systems.
Thank you. Mr. White, 91% of our nation's water systems serve communities with populations of less than 10,000 or less. I said that in my opening statement. In Alabama, 75% of the people we serve are 10,000 or less. In your experience, what suggestions do you believe could improve program operations and services for small system operators? And don't say money either. I don't hear that.
Well, that was the short answer.
Okay.
It was money. Well, one thing I would like to comment on is what is working now. What's available under the Farm Bill and the resources that are being utilized, at least in the state of Alabama. We have 3 water circuit riders, we have 2 wastewater specialists, an energy efficiency technician, numerous training staff, all working together, a source water assessment person. They all work together every day within all of the rural communities in Alabama to put in place all of these resources and technical assistance. We meet regularly. Our partnerships with USDA locally within the state are strong. We meet quarterly with USDA, SRF, ADECA, other funding partners, and provide technical assistance reports, and we really get around a table and hammer out all of the concerns for the water and wastewater systems in Alabama. Those partnerships are critical, and they really help bring everybody to the table and reduce work. We don't duplicate work. That way we can find the targeted resources for those areas. So to improve, I would say giving USDA more flexibilities, the financing options that were discussed in my written testimony, that would be critical in helping some of the rural, poor areas in Alabama. Being able to have the 0% and 1% loans, refinancing options, that would help ones at Uniontown that we're working with on the west side of Alabama now, if we had that opportunity. Additional authorities for addressing cybersecurity and more resources for emergency response would also be helpful.
Ms. Day, can you answer that one? Either one of you. Have at it. I got all the time. I'm the last one.
Well, thank you. I think the funding alternatives is definitely a way to do it. If you're looking at it without looking at additional monies to throw in there. I do think a shift in the paradigm is critical in how we operate our facilities today. The run to failure mode is where we are at. So whatever abilities and resources can be put towards systems, especially those small systems. I think if you went and talked to any operator in any small system in any state around the country, they would tell you what their problems are. They don't have the capacity, knowing what they know that needs to be addressed, the ability to go and address it. And so continuing to promote the Circuit Rider program to help them find that path forward. Education to boards and education in promoting the value of water is also critical, because it is one of the cheapest utilities out there with the highest value in life. But yet, we undervalue it incredibly. So anything along those lines, absent actual money, would be the way to go forward, I think, in helping to give those operators, as well as the system owners, which is the public, an understanding of how to create systems that will be more resilient going forward, will be more affordable to run. So any of those tools in the toolbox that can be promoted within the USDA WET program are critical in my mind.
I got one last question on all of you answered, kind of like the first one, kind of short. We'll start with Ms. Day. All these natural disasters we're having, how do we prepare for those for a water system? In your mind, I mean, because we're having more and more, we're having hurricanes, tornadoes, what we saw in Vermont this week, it's a disaster, and we have to have water. How do we prepare for that?
So we plan. I have to say that the USDA pre-development dollars are some, for the really small rural disadvantaged systems, are the only pre-development dollars that are available to them. And they can't do a feasibility study without that, because there might, like, Vermont does a good job with SRF dollars getting out to those small communities, but not every state does. And they may have an idea of what to do to make their system better, but they need that 35,000 of pre-development to actually make a change in the system. Thank you.
Mr. Duncan?
The number one answer in my mind is stop fighting Mother Nature and taking a look and understanding one of the things that's a real challenge is a lot of our systems are built in lowland areas, at least in Vermont. So it's a real challenge that's not going to change overnight, but taking a look at what the risks and liabilities are associated with each of those different those different events that come at us, and then identifying paths to resiliency and redundancy is really the only way to move that forward, as opposed to keep getting knocked down and standing back up and taking it on the chin again.
Ms. Flowers?
You know, I actually live in Tornado Alley in North Alabama.
I know you
We had a tornado last night. But I think that, first of all, planning, and in terms of dealing with resilience, we have to have resilient infrastructure. And I agree, we can't build the way that we've built before and think things are going to change. Things are actually getting worse. So building a more resilient system, just an example of a system that was built, this was in an urban area, and they didn't prepare for the lights going out. And when the lights went out, then the wastewater treatment stopped, and then the communities were flooded with raw sewage. So I think we have to start looking at what we could probably do in terms of renewable energy to use it as a backup energy source for when the power goes out, to make sure that we can continue to have water and sanitation.
Sundeser?
Thank you. Absolutely echo the resiliency planning. That's number one. I would add on to it the emergency planning as well, and making sure that those emergency plans leverage all solutions that are available. And again, that we think differently about it rather than just kind of staying in the lane. But how do we leverage all of the solutions that are available to us?
Rob?
I would say training and partnerships. We need to continue to train. It's ongoing. There are new resources and regulations that come around, each year. So making sure that, plus the workforce is changing, so new folks get into those administrative positions, making sure they're aware of what's available to them. And then partnerships with not only federal and state agencies and resources, but do you know your neighbor system? Do you have mutual aid agreements with those? Do you know your the access to resources through like our associate members, companies that are in the state that can maybe go ahead and prepare a contract for service during an emergency so you can lock in prices and ensure that you have a number of items available to you during that time. So that's what I would say, training and partnerships.
Thank you all for being here. It's been very good.
Yeah, it's been an excellent hearing. Thank you. And as our country is facing these wild weather events, climate change, more severe and frequent storms, we've got to make sure that the water in our rural community is safe and available. And that's true particularly in rural communities of color and rural economically disadvantaged communities. They often struggle with robust water infrastructure and are very vulnerable to the effects of these wild climate-induced storms. So climate resilience and equity have to be very much at the forefront of our efforts. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you. You're doing like real work, practical work, and our job is to try to help get you the resources that you need in order to help our communities back home. And we have a hard job, but you have a harder job. I just want to acknowledge that and express to you the gratitude that I think every member of this committee has for the work you're doing back home. We all really deeply care about rural America. That's what kind of binds this committee and makes it one of the most nonpartisan, bipartisan committees in Congress. So thank you. And the record will remain open for 5 business days for any members that wish to submit any additional questions or statements. And the meeting is adjourned. And I'm going to have to leave to go vote because all the other senators are going to get mad at me because I'm holding them up, okay?